We're, of course, asked a lot of the time as to what we believe about fat in the diet. And like many things in nutrition, it's not just black and white. The idea that we should all be on a very low fat diet has kind of gone by the wayside in the sense that most of the diets that seem to be health promoting, that have good evidence that they promote longevity, for instance, the Mediterranean diet. It's a moderately high fat diet. It's a diet that is much higher in what we would say is healthy fats for the most part. Moderate and saturated fat, the people traditionally living in Mediterranean regions didn't eat meat every day typically. It's just too expensive, and very few people had access to meat every day, and would probably be more lean meats anyway in those settings. The diets were typically higher in monounsaturated fat, like from olive oil, seeds and nuts, and so on, and polyunsaturated fats, like you'd see in fish, in fatty fish, and in seeds and nuts, and so on. The big thing about today is overabundance is the big problem in the industrialized food supply. So do I think that industrialized seed oils are bad for you? Well, probably not bad for you in the sense that they're bad for you, but they're overeaten for the most part. And that's one of the things you can say from the diet that most people are eating. It's overabundant in fats that are probably not so good for you if you overeat them. So that would include probably any kind of seed oils that are overabundant in omega-6 and maybe aren't as rich in omega-3 or omega-9, the monounsaturated fats. Whereas if you had more olive oil in your diet, for instance, nuts and seeds themselves, then that would probably be fine. What about saturated fat? There's a big push to push people towards a carnivore diet and to eat lots of saturated fat. And, of course, everybody's being told your brain is made of fat. Well, it is. If you dry the brain out, it's about 80% fat. A lot of it's cholesterol. A lot of it's saturated fat. There's also some omega-3s in there. But in essence, the idea that we should just all eat more saturated fat and it's all fine for you and it's heart healthy, that's really not what the overabundance of the evidence says. You can cherry pick the data. Most of it's studies that are done by about the same people that are always on the top of those studies. That they're the same people over and over again, more or less. For the most part, you can say there is a clear linear relationship between the amount of saturated fat in your diet and your LDL cholesterol. And again, the idea that the higher your LDL cholesterol is, the better. I hate to say it, but the research that is promoting that kind of idea, that don't worry about your LDL, don't worry about saturated fat in your diet, really never goes out longer than 2 or 5 years, which tells us almost nothing about cardiovascular risk. Cardiovascular risk is primarily because of the very slow, insidious development of something called atherosclerosis. And atherosclerosis is something that's occurring in every one of us. How do you know this? Well, it's been known for many years that atherosclerosis, there's evidence that it's even beginning in childhood in most people. In fact, when I was, I think it was 18 years old, living in Alberta, and as a summer research student at University of Calgary Medical School, I got a grant from the Alberta Heart Foundation to go to autopsies of sudden deaths of individuals under the age of 20 and to extract arterial specimens of the aorta and coronary arteries, take them back to my laboratory where I had to look for visible signs of atherosclerosis, which is a little streak in the arterial wall called a fatty streak, which you can see easily. If you open up the aorta, you can see where a fatty streak is. It's a yellowish looking line that is the beginning of atherosclerosis. And then I did studies on what was going on inside that fatty streak. That's another discussion. But essentially, the thing that was a big eye-opener for me, everybody under the age of 20 has atherosclerosis, at least in Alberta that I found. It was several dozen unfortunate incidences of homicide, suicide, car accidents where I found arterial specimens to contain visible atherosclerosis, the beginnings of atherosclerosis. And it led me to a lifelong study of atherosclerosis to try to understand, what is this atherosclerosis? What makes it accelerate in some people so that it manifests earlier in life and ends up creating things like heart attack and stroke, which is the primary outcomes that kill most of us. If it happens in, I guess, your 80s and 90s, well, it's probably a pretty good way to go, but if it happens in your 40s or 50s, not so good. And that's really the big problem, is premature cardiovascular disease, and that's what we're talking about. And so back to the original question, do I think that LDL is fine and you should ignore it? Well, no. There is a very, very clear and linear relationship to LDL cholesterol and some other lipoproteins like ApoB and LP(a) that are correlated with atherosclerosis. And it's really a matter of two things. There's a gas pedal and there's an accelerator in many situations. Atherosclerosis is going on in everyone. And it's a matter of whether it's gas pedal to the floor or not for many people. If you have insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, some departure in normal from blood sugar, perhaps you have some other risk factors like high blood pressure, maybe you've had smoking in your past, maybe you still smoke now, or maybe you're vaping something, or smoking something other than tobacco, realize the gas pedal is probably right on the floor. And LDL is a really important thing to consider. And taking it with a nonchalant attitude, thinking that because some YouTube influencer told you that it's fine, or somebody told you that the obesity code is just don't eat carbs and fast or something like that, you're just basically volunteering for a medical experiment that's going to take a few decades to really transpire if you're lucky. And if you're not so lucky, it might not take that long. So my sense is that, like most things in life, moderation is probably a very important principle. When it comes to saturated fat, should we eliminate it from our diet? No. People often ask me, what do I think is better, butter or margarine? Well, probably for the most part, I'd pick butter, because margarine is a highly processed food and it's sort of a frankenfood from my perspective. So I'd probably say butter mostly. But how much butter do I eat? I was born with a serious heart condition, and for me, I take my blood lipids very seriously because of that. And I'm coming up 67, and I'm still able to do everything I need to do because I've still got a pretty healthy heart, in spite of it being, a fairly serious situation that I was born with. For me, I'd say I just don't eat that much butter. I don't eat that much saturated fat. I try to moderate my saturated fat intake. And where I think it makes sense is where it's going to add some value to the enjoyment of the meal. So it maybe adds some satiety benefits. And so in moderation, maybe I eat some high-fat dairy products. When I make yogurt, I use full-fat milk, for instance, and then I limit the amount of yogurt that I eat. It's not a black and white question. It's a matter of how much is overeating. If you overeat anything, and you could say for everything there is an amount which is fine, and then there is an amount above that where it's not fine. Water, for instance, has a dose where above which it will kill you. And so is water poison? Well, it depends on the dose. So is saturated fat good for you or bad for you? Well, yeah, it's good for you in moderate amounts. But should you just go hog wild and eat anything you want and not worry about it if your LDL cholesterol goes up quite high? Well, probably not, especially if you've got other risk factors. I'd say be careful and don't volunteer for this experiment. Let the YouTube influencers do it and see what happens over time, because I'm guessing there'll be a few of them that fall by the wayside because of it.